Our spotlight speaker session is about trauma-informed interpreting. And our amazing spotlight speaker is Ani from Armenia. And yeah, I think I will not give anything away beforehand. Ani, the floor is yours. Where's Ani now? As you know, she was just, oh, there, yeah.
Hi, yeah, I'm here. I was just muted. I was moving to the other room.
Yeah. So Ani from Armenia here. Yeah, maybe you would like to also introduce yourself and yeah, trauma-informed interpreting, which fits perfect like to the topic we just had. So yeah, let us know.
Yes, it is going to be a smooth transition. I'm sorry we have to speak about this, but this is something that needs to be addressed, especially among interpreters. And thank you, Sarah. Thank you for organizing these weekly meetups, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my experience. And I do want to hear about your experiences as well. By no means do I call myself an expert or anything. I have been working with people who have been in the industry longer than I have existed. So this is just a session for sharing and hearing others' insights on a very sensitive topic. First of all, let me introduce myself. I am Ani Barseghian from Armenia. I do both conference and um, different sorts of consecutive interpretation, um, which includes medical, which is really trauma heavy. You have to interpret terminal diagnosis to the patients, to their families, um, life and death decisions, and many difficult topics. And I also live in a country that has gone through a war only a few years ago. I have lost my best friend to the war, and um, there are a lot of heavy topics around me. And I think in many different ways, consecutive interpreters deal with trauma all the time, which happens more rarely for simultaneous interpreters, because conferences where you're in the booth are more neutral, um, less traumatic. Even when you talk about trauma, it is not personal. It's mostly data, it's mostly statistics or stories, but less personal. So today I want to share my experience in trauma-informed interpreting, because when you deal with trauma, you need to be informed. Maybe your actions won't change, but you still need to take trauma into consideration. And like a very old person, I wasn't able to share my screen. So Sarah, can you please help me with that?
Yeah, let's see.
I
Yeah, yeah.
I sent my presentation to Sarah so she can share it instead of me.
Absolutely. Where are you? Oh, actually, also just make it larger. You should see everything soon. Oops.
Yes.
Like this?
Okay,
Yes,
we
let's
can
do it.
start here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Ani. I'm not sure if I introduced myself. I think I did. I have interpreted both in medical settings, for human rights, and okay, I'm just really nervous.
Oh, you're doing a great
Let's
job, really. This is totally normal, and we are so happy that that you shared such a sensitive topic, and yeah, thank you for opening up. This is so amazing.
Thank you, Sarah. Let's start with what trauma-informed interpreting is. I want to hear your definitions. What do you guys think it is? How would you define it? Anyone?
Okay, since I work with that, well, usually like the good agencies, ethical ones, I would say, before they handle us the call, they tell us what the call is about. They brief us about the call, yes? And then they usually say, look, this is a stage 4 lung cancer patient, this is about abortion, etc. And then they ask, would you like to take this call? But most agencies, they do not do that. And since I work over the phone, it's like we're blindfolded. The call comes, I just pick it up, and then suddenly, boom, you know, things happen. Yeah. And yeah, I'll give the floor to others because I tend to monopolize everything.
Oh, good. I
I
will
love
moderate. Please, yeah, anybody else who would like to share? What is trauma-informed interpreting? Maybe one more person. Don't be shy. Shushanik, what about you?
I was just unmuting myself, so you're reading thoughts.
Ah, good.
No, that's good. That's good. I was just going to say that. I am also from Armenia. That needs to be said. So that we share, actually, Annie's my friend and colleague. And I wanted to say that when it comes to trauma-informed interpreting, after the war, we had many psychologists come into Armenia and we were working with them. But sometimes I would say, what was really nice was that I didn't think of that term, but we were told by a psychologist that, I'm a psychologist. I was actually a French psychologist who came up to us and said, I'm a French psychologist. We're two interpreters. And he said, before you interpret for me, I want to talk to you. And it felt so nice because it's very rare. And he was walking us through that. And he said, I'm going to talk about this and that. And you may have re-traumatization and something. So that's something I really remembered. And that was an amazing experience. I mean, but that's all because a psychologist understands what we would need. So we're just lucky to stumble upon it. But that's what I remembered about this experience.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Great. Annie, you want to continue?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Shushan. And actually, Shushan was my teacher. She is the one who taught me most of the things I know about interpreting.
Wow.
Thank you, Shushan. And let's talk about the reasons why trauma-informed interpreting matters, because there are some aspects that can have long-term impacts, such as re-traumatization, because many times patients or victims or people in people who have traumatic experiences need to retell their stories of trauma, and it can be re-traumatizing, and we need to be very sensitive, both in our vocabulary, our tone, our contextualization of the entire conversation. And we need to be culturally sensitive because that is sometimes tricky. The next thing is the boundaries, because there are some things that are going to traumatize you, and you need to be able to set yourself apart. You need to avoid traumatizing yourself, and also you need to respect the other person's boundaries and not intrude them because they are already in a sensitive situation. The next point is self-care, because interpreting in trauma-sensitive conversations can be very tiring, it can be exhausting, it can lead to emotional burnout. You need to take care about yourself. You need to have empathy. You need to exercise empathy, because we are always taught to be neutral when interpreting, but it doesn't mean that we can't be empathetic. And I want to talk about consent as a separate topic, because it is very important that the traumatized person knows and consents to every aspect of the conversation and it being interpreted. So next slide, please. When do interpreters encounter trauma? There is a long list. I have mentioned a few here. The first one is, of course, medical setting, where a patient may be terminal. They may have gotten bad news. There might be a case of abortion or miscarriage, as Doris mentioned. Many different life-threatening cases. There can be war and terrorist attacks where innocent people die. There can be domestic violence and child protection cases. And and also natural disasters, the earthquake that we just mentioned, which is of course traumatizing, and criminal cases. Let's move on to the next one. Thank you. And who can be traumatized? When we speak about trauma-informed interpretation, we mostly speak about the person being interpreted, the person we interpret for. But we often disregard that the interpreter themselves can be experiencing trauma. For example, one of my colleagues who is now here has recently experienced a trauma, losing a loved one, and it can affect your work. You should not disregard that. And also in cases of that I mentioned after the war that I was interpreting for one of the families that have been forcibly displaced, they were from a region that my friend died defending. So I couldn't help myself. I shed a few tears, and that was natural. If I withheld it, it would still look forced. And the people who were interviewing those families told me that it's okay, that they understand, that they don't need to disregard the context. And I can even share my experience after interpreting so that those persons could feel heard. And also when you're interpreting, there can be other professionals present and they can be going through their own trauma. And that is something that we can consider as well. We can be sensitive for all of us. And next slide, please. I'm really feeling like an old teacher. Thank you.
Doing great job.
Thank you, Sarah. I want to talk about informed consent because we have learned about consent in sexual setting, in medical setting, but when you're interpreting, it is best that the participants of the conversation are well informed what they consent to. I had great experience with the University Network for Human Rights, and I met them through Respond Crisis Translations, which is a great organization. They help people with their asylum cases, different sorts of very sensitive interpretation. And they also have training for trauma-sensitive interpretation that I participated in, and it helped me greatly. And when I was interpreting for the University Network for Human Rights, their interviewers, who were basically my clients, taught me a great deal about informed consent. They asked for consent about things that I never thought of. They were asking the interviewees if they are fine with me being present, with each of them being present. I also had a meeting with the Freedom House. They were interviewing some people seeking asylum, and they took a lot of time to make sure that those people were fine with me being there because I was outside of their organization. We also often ask for their consent about topics being discussed because they might be fine with discussing with their general experience. For example, the thing I have a lot of experience with, being forcibly displaced, but they do not want to speak about the political aspect of it. They do not want to speak about losing their loved ones. It is personal for each of them, and you do not want to breach their trust. You want them to trust you, and you want to protect their feelings, their safety. And another thing that UNHR people asked for was if the interviewees were fine with us taking notes, because as a consecutive interpreter, you always take notes and you don't even pay attention to that. But it can be sensitive. You can inform them that you're going to destroy the notes. You can inform them that you are not. And the main thing that they asked for consent was privacy and sharing. They informed them where their report was going to be shared, what states are going to get them, which part of the report was going to be public. They made sure to double and triple check whether those people were fine with each of those aspects. And I would like to ask all of you if there are any other cases where you feel like you need to ask for consent while interpreting. Anyone?
Let me just stop the screen share for the question. Yeah.
Thank
Any
you.
ideas?
Would you mind repeating the question? Sorry, I just had this work stuff to reply here.
Of course.
Sorry, Annie.
Of course, Doris. I was asking whether I would listed a few cases where you need to ask for consent regarding taking notes, regarding sharing the results of the interview with someone else, or people being present, the topics. I wanted to know whether you feel like there are other cases where consent is important.
Well, this is really interesting, curious, because I work both with the US and with the UK, and the rules, regulations, compliances are totally different. The Americans, they are manic, they are paranoid about compliances, about privacy, about everything. So you need, like, it's already like understood that you are not allowed to take notes, you're not allowed to share notes, you must be in a room. There is like the HIPAA compliances that's all about these specific regulations for privacy and etc., and sharing stuff and consent. So, and on the other hand, with the UK, it does not happen so much. It's more easygoing, you know, and I do prefer that, because sometimes, because of all this American paranoia, regulations and compliance stuff, I do not feel at ease, you know, to do my job and to even show empathy. Some agencies, they are really, really hard on that. They say, you just have to be the conduit. You cannot show emotions at all. And like, come on, we're working with vulnerable people, immigrants, war refugees. They need our empathy. First of all, it's like it's much beyond being just bilingual, just learning and knowing, mastering terminology. You know, they need to trust us.
That's
First
really
of
interesting.
all,
Yeah, that's really interesting, the difference between the UK and the US.
yeah,
And do you have encountered any other situations where you needed to ask for consent? I especially like the consecutive
Americans all the
aspect.
time, with the Americans all the time. And sometimes if I do step into, like, this is the interpreter speaking, permission to intervene and say something, I've been told off by my PM after the call, because they monitor every single thing, and I've been told off by my PM saying, you should have not intervened, you're not allowed to intervene, you're not allowed to do anything, you just have to interpret verbatim and that's it, you know. So I've been avoiding.
Thank you. Yeah, that might be
them.
another situation there, right? Asking for permission for intervening. Any other ideas?
Yeah,
Anybody?
for me is when I interpret for big companies, but they know me, and then suddenly they say everything which has to stay in this boardroom is confidential, and then they know me. Then I say, okay, do you want me to sign a disclosure or not? Yeah, to be confidential. And then that's a strange thing. They say, no, Michael, we know you, no problem. And then I have to remind them, okay, I can become crazy. There are a lot of physical stuff which can happen, or so maybe it would be better for you to have, because it's very important, can be information which changes the stock exchange worth of the company. So, but they have a lot of trust in me. That's so strange. I wouldn't do it
That's quite
myself.
interesting. Yeah, I see what you
That's-
mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great relationships you have built with your
Oh, yeah, okay,
clients.
but not for everyone. It's
Yeah.
only for the companies where I work 10 years or
Yeah, of
longer. So,
course. Yeah. Well, great. Thank you. Annie, would you
Yes,
like to hear?
moving forward.
Shall I continue with the screen share? Let's see.
Yes, thank you.
Next slide or?
The next one, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think we spoke about neutrality and empathy because it is very important for us to tell the difference, to have our own lines where you need to be neutral and where you can show your empathy. I already told about a case where I just couldn't help myself and I needed to share it, and it was just the natural course of the conversation. And I especially when it's in person, you cannot pretend that you're not there. You're there. You're often the only one that understands the person experiencing trauma, and you can't ignore it. You can't pretend like they are the other parties are understanding. And sometimes you're just the first one to be able to show empathy, and it shows in your tone of voice, your pace, your choice of words. And Sarah, next one, please. The pace is extremely important because when of course you can interrupt people, you can ask beforehand to speak in shorter segments, but when someone is telling you how he lost a loved one, how an explosion happened and took away the lives of 3 of his family members, you cannot say, oh, wait, let me interpret that, and then you can go ahead. That's why you need to hone your note-taking skills a lot, because sometimes you have to take endless notes. I have had cases where I took several pages of notes, and when they were too emotional and they needed to take a breath, I asked them, while you're taking a breath, please let me interpret this section. And I had to double check a few things, like, were they on the opposite side of the cemetery? Were they shooting from the next village? Were they sending the threats personally or via social media? Those sorts of difficult questions I had to double check in order to convey it correctly, but I still had to use extremely long notes, which is something anyone can learn. It comes from someone who hated to take notes, because it's never perfect. Notes are never perfect. You always have a lot to learn. But when you do, it helps you be more empathetic, be more precise, and of course you can't use your pitchy voice. You can't laugh at random funny words that the person is using. You can't show emotions that are not empathetic. Next one, please.
May I ask you a
Sure,
question, Annie?
of course.
I'm a simultaneous interpreter, and I prefer simultaneous to note-taking and
Me too.
consecutive. Is it possible in these cases, because you're with a person in the room, to work with a headset and do simultaneous maybe, and be more in the background, and only the conversation is between, let's say, the psychologist and the victims? So is this possible? Is this, you see this often that people work with a headset, and this possibility?
It is a possibility, but I've never encountered it.
Okay.
I have encountered it during a remote medical appointment where it was via Zoom. So we had the possibility to use everything, but often it is just too expensive,
Yeah, but
because even
nowadays
if the
we have this new possibilities with with apps on our smartphone, so someone can have a earplug and then listen to you via the smartphone, and you send your rendition to the smartphone also via this app. So I think maybe in the future it will be more normal to do this.
It is a possibility, and I think it will work. I haven't experienced it, but I think I will someday.
Okay.
And it also helps the interpreter remain more neutral, which is great.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because then we are in the background, and it's more really a discussion between,
yes.
the more direct thing, and they can
Yes.
look each other in the eyes, and so because also the body language is very important, the mimic, and so they can concentrate more on this.
Yes, that is a great one. But also, I'm going to talk about context more. Sometimes you just need to interrupt and give some more context, which is not a possibility when you're working simultaneously.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you for your question. Now moving on, let's talk about strategies for protecting yourself, because it can lead to terrible burnouts. So before the assignment, mental preparation and setting boundaries, you need to speak with the client. You need to speak with the person who is experiencing trauma. You need to be honest with yourself and understand what your strategy is, because for every kind of interpretation is different. I've had a cancer patient that wanted to die, and their family that wanted for the patient to be treated. And I had to navigate through that conversation without being involved, without showing my opinion, of course. But that was something that required a conversation with the medical staff as well. As Doris mentioned, sometimes you prepare and it helps during the interpretation. And during the actual work, you need to be mindful. You need to remember that this is work. You're working, whether you're volunteering or this is paid work. It is work, and you're not an actual part of the conversation. In some way you are, but in some way you're not, and it is not your trauma, as long as it's not yours. Of course, it can be yours as well, but you don't have to internalize it. You have to focus on the task, and breathing techniques work. And also after the assignment, debriefing, it works wonders. You want to debrief with your client. You want to discuss the sharp points, and without sharing personal or sensitive information, you can speak with your colleagues and support each other. And then, of course, you can use some self-care, some rest, some sports, whatever helps you. Anyone wants to share their strategies?
Stop the screen share for this again. Yeah, strategies, anybody? How to unwind after
Well, I'd like to share this experience of mine, because before, like, I lost my mom about a week ago or so. I think you people who are connected via LinkedIn with me, you followed it, and it was really hard. And then before that, I used to take stage 4 lung cancer patients all the time. And it was not a problem for me, like the topics, psychology, psychiatry, miscarriage, abortion, it never bothered me at all. What bothers me till today is like when people do not know how to use the interpreter. So they do not have taking sensitivity, they start speaking over each other, and then we have to put order in the house. These things really bother me. I don't suffer from vicarious or vicarious trauma as it happens. But since I lost my mom, I've been thinking, I haven't gone back to taking calls yet because I'm solving bureaucratic stuff like death stuff. But I've been thinking, how am I going to react to stage 4 lung cancer patients from now on, since I had this super close experience and really painful with my mom, So I don't know what coping mechanisms should I have, or should I ask agencies to be this specific trauma informed about the calls? What do you guys suggest, Annie, especially you?
Oh, I haven't experienced that, so I'm not sure, but I think just mental exercises to try to distance yourself would be a solution.
And maybe there's another possibility. You always can say no.
Yes.
Because let's see, extreme example, it's not nice to talk about it as a man in front of ladies, but it happens that ladies are victims of sexual misconduct. So when this would happen to me, maybe I would say I don't accept any case where this is a subject. But okay, we have to ask before the agency. Okay, what's the case? What is it about? But mostly we don't get this information, and then it can be really shocking to be confronted with a case, and you think, oh, this is very personal. I don't want to do it, and you can't run away then, or you start crying maybe. But
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for sharing, everybody, and Doris also for opening up and being vulnerable. Thank you so much, and really great solution suggestions. And I think Rafaela also wanted to share something.
Well, just two things. That I agree with Michael. There are certain things that you have to be able to say no to, things that is not going to be good for you. So funny enough, that was one of the things that I do avoid, because I do crime as well. So if that's the kind of crime that I'm going to cover, I rather not go. Or other things, for example, if the assignment is someone else's house, I rather not. I prefer being in a public building. I don't like going to anyone's place, because I think that's it's a situation that you will see things that you definitely don't want to. I avoid that as well. And I would say that a strategy, like Annie asked, that I think is good is for us to have a variety of skills to be able to do different types of jobs linguistically. Because, for example, if I think that interpreting is getting a little bit too much, because I deal with a lot of criminal stories and everything, so I think that if you're going through that, and so I need some time off, but it's not like we can stop working. So maybe maybe for a while I'll do some translations. So I start getting some more translation jobs, so I can calm down from the interpreting trauma informed. Working with organizations as well is quite heavy. After 2 years that I did that, I needed a break. Even though I love volunteering and I love the organization that I did work with, after a while I see, look, I need a break. And they knew that. They knew that they could see that in me, and they say they just kept the doors open for when I want to come back. So I think that's how you give yourself some time off. Not necessarily, it's not that you're going to stop working, but maybe try to work with something else that's less
also
heavy.
good ideas. Absolutely. Yeah, looking after yourself, like self-care. And for this, you need to understand what you need and what's not good for you. And this is all a learning process, but very, very good aspects. Thank you, everyone. And also nice conversation going on in the chat, by the way. Ordinary burnout and ashing burnout. Super interesting. If you guys want to read. Shusha, please.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say some things that really helps me. Again, I'm not in a position to talk about that trauma, luckily, but what I would do is, I mix translation, teaching, and interpretation. And because we're a small country, we also interpret about a variety of topics. So we're not very specialized in a just because we don't have enough people who speak enough languages across the professions. So I think it really helps, because only interpreting for situations which are traumatic would be really would take a toll on anyone, I believe. And in that case, I think you could try adjacent areas, you know, like, I don't know, or something completely different, like linguistics or biology, or I do not know whether this country would, where you are allowed, where your positions would allow you, because I know there are very strict restrictions across countries and requirements. We're quite free to do so, but as I said, if you are working with factual, biological, you know, just laboratory analysis that have nothing to do with human beings in a way, and then you come back to a psychological conversation, you feel a bit more relaxed and you have more energy for that, probably. But just as an idea. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. And you also wrote about ordinary and Ashing burnout. Would you like to explain?
Yeah, just to quickly explain to you that we were translating the word burnout to Armenian. So I came up to a psychologist and I said, burnout is translated as burnout, like burning. They said, yeah. And then they said, but there is another word. And I was very surprised because I've never heard it as an ordinary Armenian. So it's a psychological term. It's ashing. And ashing is, they said, when after ashing, like you go into ashes, which means there is no way of coming back. And it's not only a word, it's a concept, I think. So they said, you can come back from a burnout, but you cannot come back from an ashing. And unfortunately, I've seen people like that who are so burned out, they can no longer do their jobs. So just to think about it as a spectrum, can we relax, or it's already too much? And I just thought that, you know, culturally, thank you so much.
This distinction, absolutely, yeah. No, thank you. Ani, shall I continue to share?
Yes, please, thank you. Yes, I wanted all of us to share cases, if possible. I shared a couple, and maybe you would like to share too.
Yeah, I think we've already started. Huh? Anybody else who would like to share something? So again, everybody who shared already, you know. Oh yeah, Rafaela, please.
It's not really like a sharing a traumatic situation, but because Annie also mentioned about one of the strategies is debrief. Just bear in mind that not every professional actually does a debrief with you. I was in a appointment for it was mental health, but it was for an elderly. The hospital was specific for that. And funny enough, that you get ready because you know the type of place that you're going to, so you kind of get ready for that. You know your glossary for that. However, if you still don't know the case, which I didn't, and the elderly, she was by herself, which usually is not the case, because in an elderly hospital, they usually have someone accompanying them. And in that case, the elderly was by herself, and she was started telling stories and about other people. And only after a while, they realized that those people were only in her head. It was only her voice. So yes, when I finally realized that, oh, okay, so now I know the context, and you know. But the funny thing is that the appointment continued on, but it was kind of heavy stuff because, you know, it was all voices in her head. And in the end, it was the only time really that the professional actually asked me, are you okay? So she was really nice to me. She said, are you okay? Do you need any support? Because of all that we heard here. I said, no, I to be honest, if I could just ask the next time that you just let me know what's going on at first, because only in the middle of the thing, I got to know that everything was only in her head, because I was thinking that we were talking about other people. But it was heavy, but I already have my own strategies for that. But it was the only time that actually someone debriefed with me. It's not common for the professionals to say, oh, you're okay, do you need support or anything like that?
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, for this, maybe a colleague, like accountability buddy would be helpful to debrief each other after those kind of assignments, so that you have some kind of relief afterwards.
No, I obviously I always have someone to talk to, not about the details of the appointments, but you know, it's usually who is closest to me is obviously my husband. He knows, oh, was it hard today? Was it heavy today? So he knows how it is, and he's my confidant. So he helps me with that.
Yeah, in the Netherlands, maybe can add this. In the Netherlands, we are starting to form groups to talk about this traumatic stuff. And at the moment, it's not sure if we will do this with an outside expert, or we will do it only in our groups. So, but this is a new development in the Netherlands.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Totally important
Thank you.
to start discussing and taking more serious maybe, yeah, and yeah, acknowledging it.
Could I also share? I don't want to overshare, but just
Please, Shusha, yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, maybe
Please
just
overshare.
there was this short story. I mean, it's not right to call it funny, but it was ironic as a situation for sure, because we're in a big hotel with many conference rooms. We're interpreting simultaneously, and there was a lady from Lebanon who joined, and it was all about women's rights. And obviously, she had just escaped shelling, so it was a very difficult thing to interpret emotionally. We're two interpreters, luckily, still. And suddenly, we hear laughter, very high-pitched laughter, and everyone is, this is in the middle of the story. There was another conference room nearby when they were interpreting some funny marketing strategy, and I don't know what. It was so out of place. So it was both in a way funny, but not funny at all given the situation. And then we went to see the other interpreters we knew, and they said, yeah, I'm sorry, that sound was too much. We said, yeah, we're having a heavy conversation. So we said, we're sort of jealous of you, but as inappropriate as the situation may be, still, I think it relieved people a bit, because it was getting too hard, and every single person out of the 50 or so people was crying. So there was just, an awkward situation happening, but in a way that made people, yeah, I mean, both funny and sad. I don't know how to say that. Yeah, don't have words for that. Not that I feel happy about that, but I mean, it happens. Yeah, and what is interesting is that side by side, you have conferences and events happening with a completely different mood and tone, and that's something that came to my mind that I thought.
Yeah, that's also very, very interesting and surreal in a bit, in a way. Huh?
Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Surreal would do. Yeah.
Maybe you can also, because you're talking with a group of interpreters, did you ever encounter, let's see, someone who is responsible for the whole interpreter group, team head, or how do you say it? How does someone who has a responsibility for his colleagues could cope with this situation? I don't know if you encountered someone who had a strategy to relieve the stress of the whole group of interpreters. Don't know.
Sounds interesting, but I haven't encountered anything like that yet.
Yeah, because this could also be an extra responsibility for the one who is a team leader.
Michael, we usually don't have team leaders in Armenia. I mean, we're all, I think we're all peers, and we don't have, at least officially or on paper or so, we really don't have, where we quite often assign it to a more experienced interpreter, let's say, but it's not, is it an official role in your context?
Sometimes you have really this official roles.
Interesting.
And can be as freelancer, you're part of a team, and then someone is the contact person to the client.
Very good. Yeah, that we have, but only the contact person.
Yeah,
that's it. But what you're saying is a very interesting development. That is, maybe we'll come to that. Thank you.
It came up in my head now. So,
great.
I want to ask it.
By the way, as a side note, remember, Sarah, we discussed an off-the-record conversation about our markets and dirty laundry and everything. I would love to have that.
To what? Sorry, you would like?
I would like to have that conversation, separate conversation about all our separate markets, how we work, agencies, non-agencies, how everything works in each specific market.
Oh, you mean like as a new spotlight speaker topic?
not even a
Maybe
spotlight speaker, but a gossip session.
Oh yeah, great. I take note of it. That won't be recorded then.
I
and
think
won't
it's
be
more than
shared.
gossip.
Yeah.
It's really a serious discussion. We can learn a lot of each
Gossip
other.
is serious.
Yes. Yeah.
Gossip is serious. I'm a man. I don't do gossips.
Oh,
Well,
come
let me
on.
actually share your last slide again so that people can maybe, scan your QR code. Here's
Oh, thank you.
proof you're not an
And
old person. Look, there's a
I know
QR
we're
code there.
out.
This is so modern.
I know we're out of time. This is QR code to my LinkedIn page. I know we're out of time, but there is one small thing I wanted to mention as well. It is about context. You know, people from the US are very direct. They ask questions that sound out of order as if they are something natural. For example, they can ask a person who had just told them about the threat to their lives to elaborate on what risk there is if they remain in the area that is under shelling. And it can if the other person is already on the edge, if they are already traumatized, it can be I don't know, disheartening. It can lead to them to have an extreme reaction, like, what are you asking me? Don't you already know? And it is just a small touch that you say, just for the record, and then ask the question, even if the other person didn't say that. Or I, as an interpreter, I know, but one more time for the people from the other country, can you please tell that? Or when they ask elderly women when their last period was, obviously they haven't had it for decades, but you have to ask it for the form. And just saying that this is for the form, this is for the record, this is for the report, eases the conversation, and it's not out of place. I have asked clients many times whether I can add that, and they were always fine with that. So if there isn't a protocol that tells you shouldn't do that, you're welcome to do that, because at least in my culture in Armenia, you always give context, you always have context, you always insert yourself. So those direct and cold questions can be perceived negatively, and you can add context for that. And that was all I wanted to share today. And thank you. And as a favorite writer and podcaster, Stephen Dubner, says, take care of yourselves. And if you can, someone else too. Please add me on LinkedIn. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope we will remain in contact. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Sarah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Ani. Really, this is really was such a great talk. So applause, applause. And thank you for opening up, everybody.
Thank you.
For opening up, sharing your stories, being vulnerable. Really, this is really greatly appreciated. Did everybody scan the code? I would stop the screen share now. Okay, great. Yeah.
I think I'm connected to most participants already.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, this was such a wonderful session. Yeah, let's all digest it now, and again, like, I cannot thank you enough for sharing this. This is what what this community lives from. And yeah, unless, of course, before we wrap up, is there anything else anybody would like to say, share, comment on? No? All right. Then have a great Wednesday, and I see you next Wednesday for our networking event. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.